All right, we are recording. All right. Hi, everybody. We are back for another interview. So many of our interviews are updates on topics that we have covered in the past, but now things have changed. So we want to get some new updates on how different programs and projects are changing and making modifications to still reach their goals during COVID-19. Um, so today we have Callie with us. I'm so excited that she's able to join us, Callie Kennington. So first, again, I'll introduce myself. My name is Jessica Trimble. I'm the Director of Communication and Outreach here at Indiana Disability Rights. And Callie, share with us your title and your organization.
Yeah, so I am the campaign manager for Count Me Indy, which is Indianapolis and Marion County's complete count campaign for the 2020 census. Been working on these efforts for over a year now, but as Jessica said, our efforts have had to pivot due to the coronavirus pandemic.
So you talked about, in general, you're doing census work for and managing the campaign for Marion County and the City of Indianapolis. But what are some of the more specific roles that you've been taking on during working on this project the past year?
A little bit of, honestly, we had a smaller budget compared to a lot of cities and states who were able to dedicate millions of dollars towards these efforts. So really thinking strategically where we should be spending our money and focusing our efforts. Our campaign is specifically positioned to reach undercounted populations in the census. That's where the majority of our focus for our outreach goes. So when we are putting together what's called our complete count committee, we thought of groups that really reached those communities that were worried about being undercounted. So on our complete count committee, we have an African American subcommittee, Latinx, Hispanic and International subcommittee for renters and low income individuals. And then we also know as time has gone on, we've pulled in other organizations who reach other historically undercounted populations that we're worried about, such as our LGBTQ plus populations and people with disabilities.
So that's really interesting that I hadn't really thought about renters and people who aren't homeowners being undercounted. Do you have any information of why traditionally they might be an undercounted group of people?
Yeah, renters are hard sometimes to pin down. Well, a lot of times, or I shouldn't say a lot of times necessarily, but millennials are also one that we're worried about, right? And so often millennials sometimes are renting too, so they kind of overlap, and there's specific challenges with each of those populations. Renters, we have challenges with because they're so transient. And when you're filling out your census, it's a point in time, right? April 1st, 2020 is the point in time that you're meant to reference. So if someone was in the process of moving during that time and they moved on April 7th, for example, they might have lost that piece of mail or lost that messaging in the move because they were focused on other things. And so that's why we've been doing specific outreach to them to make sure that they know that they are supposed to reference April 1st. The place they were on April 1st is the place that they are meant to be counted.
Okay, so clearly April 1st is our magic day, April 1st, 2020. So even if I have not completed the census yet, I still can, but I need to talk about where I was and who was living with me in that household on April 1st, 2020.
Yes.
Okay. So far, how is Indiana doing?
Yeah, so we are about on par with the national average. Yesterday when I checked, we were at 54% self-response rate. It actually updates. You can see it in kind of real time. It updates at 3 p.m. in Eastern time every day at 2020census.gov. You can see our response rates and the response rates for the whole nation. So to give you an idea of what like that 54% means in context of, for example, 2010 self-response rate. In 2010, Marion County's ultimate self-response rate was 65.3%. So we are almost reaching 2010 self-response rate. And given the coronavirus pandemic, the U.S. Census Bureau has extended their operations. So we actually have a longer self-response period than in 2010. So people can self-respond to their census now until October 31st, 2020.
Oh, okay. So people have, till October 31st, 2020 to respond, and they can respond by online, mail, or phone, right?
Yes. So the website to respond online, the direct link is my2020census.gov. And then they can also respond online. There's a slew of different phone numbers available in different languages. But the English phone number is 844-330-2020. And I can follow up with the rest of those numbers too. But the U.S. Census Bureau has also started sending out the paper forms. And so those are available in English and Spanish. And so if someone isn't comfortable with technology, or they had just missed the forms before and are just want to do it the old-fashioned way, pen and paper, those forms have been arriving in mailboxes these past couple weeks.
So what happens if I want a paper form, but I haven't gotten it? Can I request one, and how would I do that?
So from my understanding, you will receive a paper form if you have not yet filled out your census.
Okay.
To necessarily request one, they will automatically send one.
Oh, okay, great. I know that when we've been working with you on some things, we were using a lot of computers at libraries, and we were going to do some hubs together to support people. So obviously, we can't go to those places anymore. So what are some ways that you're encouraging people to respond to the census if perhaps I don't have consistent internet at my house, or I don't have a computer? So what are some other options for me?
Yeah. So something that we are doing right now to make sure we're still getting the word out to populations that we're worried about missing our messaging. As you mentioned, we were planning on being at libraries and community centers with access to the internet. So something that we're doing right now is we are printing flyers to put in the food distribution boxes that a lot of community organizations are doing. We actually have an established relationship with Gleaners right now. And from my understanding, they do the food distribution for IPS schools. So with them and other community organizations, we are stuffing those food boxes with some brief information about why the census is important, as well as the phone numbers that folks can call. And we are still trying to strategize, if they want to respond online, how can they still do that? So I know that some other community or some other organizations throughout the United States who are doing this work have partnered with libraries, for example, who have extended their Wi-Fi range into the parking lot, so that if people want to go just park in that parking lot for a few minutes and check their email or fill out their census, they're able to do that. So that's a conversation that's still in the works, but we're hoping to do something similar.
Interesting. So like a Wi-Fi hotspot with social distancing.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's really clever. So I feel like obviously all the news is about COVID-19, understandably so. So I think some other messages are getting maybe not heard as much. So can you just remind us, why is the 2020 census so important? Why is it important for us to fill out that information?
Yeah. We've definitely been having that struggle too, although we have had some good news coverage, and we've been ramping up our paid media coverage too, specifically like working with influencers and doing some digital ad buys to make sure we're compensating for, all the people who are staying home right now who could be receiving that messaging. But a few reasons why the census is important. It's a snapshot of our country, right? It tells us how our demographics are changing over time. And this is something that is written into our Constitution and has been going on since 1790. One of the reasons that we talk about and why it's so important is that federal funding piece. So to put it simply, we need to know how many people are here so that we get our fair share piece of the pie, I like to say. So essentially the federal government wants to know how many people are living in Indianapolis, how many people are living in Marion County, so that they can allocate the appropriate amount of federal dollars to our community. So roughly the buckets that money goes into are education, housing, healthcare, transportation, emergency services, and a slew of different programs that benefit like our well-being and quality of life here in Indianapolis. And to give you more specific examples, that can be SNAP, WIC, free and reduced school lunches, Medicare, all kinds of programs for mental health services and children. There's so many programs that are impacted by our census count.
That's really helpful because I think it's one of those things that we don't realize the interconnectivity of what decisions and funding decisions are being made based on those census numbers. We just kind of think it's genealogy in the future, or it's just because we just want to have a number. So I appreciate you kind of connecting those pieces, that it really means a lot of real life services for all of us, and also representation at the federal level, right?
Yeah, so the number is also used to determine the distribution of political power at every level of government. So for the 2020 census, Indiana really isn't at risk of losing or gaining a seat in the House of Representatives, but that can determine how many people are representing us in Congress.
So what are some of the rumors you've heard about the 2020 census that you want to dispel? Like, give us a myth and then tell us the truth.
Yeah, so actually a study that the U.S. Census Bureau did recently showed that a portion of the people who were surveyed believed that that information could be used against them or could be used by the FBI. So that's a common misconception, that this information is out there, and then if I give this information about myself, then the IRS might be able to follow up on something. You know what I mean? So that's a common misconception. Your individual census responses are confidential for 72 years. Kind of a weird number, but it's what's considered a lifetime. And so when you were talking about ancestry, the last available census records, I believe, are from 1940. So they take that very seriously, and they do not release those individual census records for 72 years. And when I say it can't be shared with anyone, I mean it can't be shared with, again, any federal law enforcement agency, the FBI, IRS, ICE, even the President of the United States does not have access to individual census records for 72 years. So that's something that we always talk about because we want to make sure that people know that their information is safe. Another one is, I'm sure some of you are following in the news last year, the possibility of a citizenship question being on the census. There is no citizenship question because that got so much media attention. Some people are still unsure if there will be a question or not. There is no citizenship question, and everyone counts regardless of citizenship status. So even if there would have been a citizenship question on there, it wouldn't have mattered. Immigration status does not matter. Every single person living here on April 1st, 2020 is counted in the census, and their information is confidential and safe.
Great. I think there's a lot of information going around, so it's always nice to have things clarified of what is real and what is not. So Callie, is there anything else that you want to share about the census that you want us to know or want to, obviously we want to encourage people to respond. We'd love to get over the response rate of 2010 for sure. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was just thinking, one of the challenges we're up against right now with the pandemic is we have a lot of great universities within our county, IUPUI, Marion University, Butler University. And one of the things that is confusing now, because a lot of those students have had to relocate home, which could be outside of Marion County or outside of Indiana altogether due to the pandemic, there's confusion about where they should be counted. And so university students should be counted where they would have been otherwise had the pandemic not happened. So if you were living near IUPUI, if you were going to IUPUI and you moved back home to Ohio, for example, because your university closed, you should still be counted here. And we want to make sure that university students in Marion County are counted here because that's going to be so important for planning for the next generation of students, right? For the next 10 years.
That's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about the timing of the pandemic and for universities and people to be moving, if they lived in the dorms or if they lived in off-campus housing that closed. That's a really good point. So if I was a freshman at Butler and I moved home, I should still be counted in the census at Butler.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. My gosh, there's just so many things that are impacted by this that I hadn't thought of. That is really interesting. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
I think that's it. We covered so much, I think. I really just want to reiterate that this is so important for our community for the next decade, and every single person counts. Actually, every single person counted in Indianapolis and Marion County is basically the equivalent of $30,000 that will come into our community over the next decade for those programs that we talked about, for those federally funded programs. $30,000 per person, up to $30,000 per person.
That's significant dollars. I think putting that dollar value on it is really important to let people know this isn't, there is a real connection to services and things. Well, wow, I had no idea it was that much. Well, Callie, thank you so much for doing this for us. We really appreciate you and your work. We'll make sure to post some links to Marion County's work and some other census information. And thanks to Amy and Angela for interpreting for us today. So with that, good to see everybody. Good to see you, Callie. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.